Morning, everyone. Glad that you have joined us on this Monday at lunchtime. Welcome. If you were with us yesterday for our Sunday worship service, we talked a little bit about bearing fruit. And today I want to kind of continue along that theme with a passage that comes from Luke chapter 13, verses 6 through 9. It's honestly something that when I read it, I thought to myself, gosh, this is not one that we look at a lot. It doesn't come in our rotation of passages that we look through every 3 years that you might know of as the lectionary. It's something, and it was one of those stories that sort of jarred me because I just didn't remember it all that well. So listen and read along Luke chapter 13, verses 6 through 9 with me. Jesus then told this parable. A man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came looking for fruit on it, but he found none. So he said to the gardener, "See here, for 3 years I have come looking for fruit on this fig tree, and still I find none. Cut it down. Why should it be wasting the soil?" He replied, "Sir, let it alone for 1 more year until I dig around it and put some manure on it. And if it bears fruit next year, well and good. But if not, you can cut it down." That's the parable that Jesus gives us in Luke chapter 13, verses 6 through 9. And it sort of ends there. I want to invite you to think about that for a minute. To think about what God is saying to us through this story. There's some questions that this brings up for me. One, it makes me think about, well, maybe, what if I'm not bearing much fruit right now? What if it feels like I'm not bearing much fruit right now? Maybe my life is a little stagnant. Things aren't going as planned. Things aren't happening as I hoped they would happen. This parable reminds me that, one, God is waiting for me to start. But it also reminds me that if I'm in a season where there's not much fruit bearing in my life, that God's mercy is there giving me the opportunity, just like that gardener in the story, asking, hey, hold off the axe. Don't cut him down yet. But let's take some opportunity here. Let's aerate the soil around Jason a little bit more. Let's work that soil a little bit more. Let's add some more fertilizer, some more manure to that soil and give him some time. It's almost like a story, not almost, it is a story of God's grace being there for us, even when we're in those dormant seasons of life, not finding much fruit within us, around us, producing from our lives, that there is an advocate for us, the Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ himself, like that gardener saying, hey, hold on. Let's not cut him down yet. Let's not take it all away right now. But instead, God, let's pour some more into this person's life. Let's make some room. Let's loosen the soil around this person a little bit. Maybe things are just too hard, too difficult for those roots to take the kind of grasp of the soil and suck up the water that's needed and the nutrients. Let's give it a little bit more space. Let's offer a little bit more time and see what might happen, because you never know. We talked Sunday about how we all go through dormant seasons of our lives. We talked about how this past year with COVID might have been for all of us one of those dormant seasons of our lives. But even from dormancy, we can't stay there forever, right? If winter lasted forever, we'd have a whole lot of dead trees and bulbs and grasses and flowers and bushes. Spring eventually comes, and we have to reach out and grow some new shoots. This gardener seems to realize that. Sometimes spring comes and maybe we don't respond, or maybe things don't go well. But this gardener says, hey, hang on. there might be something that we can do. And notice what that is that the gardener doesn't even blame the tree, the fig tree, for not producing fruit. What does the gardener say about the tree that didn't produce fruit? Let me pour some more into that to see if we can get it to happen. What if the gardener is the Holy Spirit? What if the gardener is Jesus Christ himself, going before God for us to say, hey, maybe if we just pour a little bit more into this person's life, maybe the sprouts will come. A little bit more aeration, a little bit more fertilizer, a little bit more time. What's interesting is that with this fig tree, 3 years was actually a pretty standard amount of time to give for a tree like this to produce fruit. You plant it, you give it some time to grow and mature so that it can produce fruit. And there are some writers who have suggested that this is actually a very standard amount of time that a vineyard grower, a fruit grower, would give for a tree to produce something. And that at the end of this 3-year period, if the tree had produced nothing, the logical, the normal, the thing that would have been done by the agriculturalist of Jesus' day would have been to uproot it and to plant another one in its place. If it didn't produce in 3 years, it wasn't going to produce. It would have been completely logical and within their right and their normal system of agriculture to replace that unproductive tree so that it doesn't take up valuable ground that could be used for a tree that was producing fruit. Makes us ask the question, are you bearing fruit or are you just taking up space? That question, when I first thought about it, it kind of came across to me in a certain negative kind of way, like, well, sometimes maybe I am just taking up space. But here's what the parable reminds us, that even when life doesn't feel right, even when we're not producing like we think we should, like we feel that we should, even when things aren't going about in a fruitful way, there Jesus Christ is. There the Holy Spirit is. There God is, pouring into us all that we need, giving us that one more chance, giving us that 4th year that we don't deserve, giving us the extra time that isn't logical and doesn't make any sense, but it's given because of how much we are loved. Now, yes, there's a deadline, if you will. Even the gardener admits, look, we're going to pour into this fig tree again, and we're going to see what happens. But look, hey, if it doesn't produce after this time, chop it down. That is there. And yet what is also there is the amazing grace that God has for us. This extravagant love that the Holy Spirit goes on behalf of us to say, what more might be needed? What more can we give to this tree, to this person, that might just lead it to bear some fruit? Well, I hope no matter where you are in your life this day, that you'll take some time to consider what God is pouring into you right now in this season. Whether it was pre-pandemic, whether it was the beginning of the pandemic, whether it was mid-pandemic, whether it's right now as things are beginning to open back up and we are beginning to sense some of the freedom from the stay-at-home and the lockdown of the past year. Whatever place you find yourself in, the truth is that gardener, Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, is advocating for you, pouring into your life, fertilizing your life in every season, at every time, waiting on you to bear fruit. Let's bear fruit. Let's not just take up space, but let's look to the Lord and find what fruit we can produce. If you are watching with us on Facebook or YouTube, thanks so much for joining us. You can join us now for a time of prayer, concern, sharing, and lifting up and celebration, and then we'll pray together on our free conference call line. That's 563-999-1222. You can close down Facebook now and join us there. And if you are already on our prayer call line, please stay there, and we will be right with you as we share our concerns and go to the Lord together.